with the School of Architecture of Paris Val de Seine already. You talked about your principle of acupuncture architecture. We wonder where this proposal of the concept comes from. Do other architects use this same principle in your country or in your area, or it's just you that come up with this idea?
Yeah, yes, we did start with this acupuncture strategy in Songyang County, and that's the working method we proposed to the county and also to the local communities for collaboration after a year long of communication and understanding process. And with this strategy, we are looking into a small scale, a micro scale intervention into the rural villages and the rural region, which is rather a sensitive approach or human-centered approach to the local context and local community compared to the urbanization process in many of the cities, right? Always large scale demolition and construction. So I would say that this is a proposal after a year of understanding of the local village context. And I mean, acupuncture isn't something coming out of nowhere. It's in the Chinese medicine. It's very Asian Oriental philosophy, looking into human body circulation. You know, it's to achieve the overall well-being. It's not like the our modern science, you know, performing massive surgery. And acupuncture is rather, it's alternative, but it's also this homeopathic way of healing, looking for a healing treatment for the overall system. So with this acupuncture strategy, we are not only talking about, you know, as an architect working on small scale projects, it's actually through these small scale projects. So architecture is the means, not our final goals, only to make a building. Is that we take architecture as the means, the effective strategy to revitalize the rural village one by one, and also to increase the circulation and interaction among these villages, and also together with the county urban center to build urban-rural linkage to achieve an overall well-being in this urban-rural context in Songyang County. So we're looking into the whole county region with county urban center and satellite system of towns and villages as a integrated system instead of dividing all these villages one by one. So that's what acupuncture means, and they're really making the mapping system in the county scale, similar to the human body. You know, acupuncture isn't just by, you know, the needles injecting into the point. It's to achieve your overall well-being, and it's a curing, healing process. So I hope that could answer your question, and also I think this is really important, because as an architect or architecture students, we also think of making architecture as our almost like a belief or religion. But this is actually looking at architecture from a different perspective. And in that way, like I said, architecture is the means, not the goals. And yes, I have seen that acupunctural strategy has been also working in other rural region, countryside in China as well. I mean, after you get to understand the village context, you I think for architect, the approach to the village is becoming more and more sensitive, and also more rather into the small scales.
Okay. I also have a question linked a little bit to this, to what you're talking about. You said that the actual architectural acupuncture comes with it's a process that it's revitalizing rural areas. It's a healing process. So how do you achieve that? What is your methodology when having a new project, for example? I mean, you can
that
talk.
is the if you get to understand the acupuncture, it is looking into each village, really by research into each village to look for its own character, its identity. And it could be a ancestor, it could be a cultural context, it could be a historical or a traditional context, and or production, agricultural production. And I mean, we have been working with a few different rural factories, for example, the Tofu Factory, and also the brown sugar factory, rice wine factory. And the more we explore, you know, the further we explore, the more we discover about this rural agriculture. It's really fascinating. And well, this is not related to the question, but it's really my passion at the moment that, you know, after working with the Songyang County, we have been looking into we call it rural identity, village identity, and into each villages. And now in a different county, we are starting with a number of projects relating with the agriculture, sustainable agriculture versus the conventional industrial agriculture. So, I mean, that's just what we are working now. But going back to this Tofu Factory, yes, it's we actually, not only us, but we work together with the county local authorities and the village community to come up with this Tofu Factory program. And we really have to understand what the village is proud of. And I mean, if you go to the village and ask them, what is the special, you know, what's the most special thing or something that you're most proud of about your own village, they would instantly give you something like the ancestor. We had a Tongji Memorial Hall. There was the Ancestors Memorial, and that was decided on the first day we visited the village. And you just ask them, and it's something very direct and very much by intuition, and they all know by heart. So yeah, that it's simple like as that. Okay.
Well, it's fascinating how you talk about these agricultural process, if I may. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what are you doing now? Or, for example, you said you're working on it. I'm interested to know.
Yeah, I would like to show. So I think this is something that I really want to talk about, not only to focus on these two projects, but we are starting on the agricultural projects, which are new at the moment. So we are looking into, do you know about silk farming system? You know, the silkworm, and yeah. Yes, and then this aquaponics, where you have the in the rice field, and you can also raise fish or duck, and they have this kind of a coexistence system in the agriculture. And then we also get to learn, you know, with this silk farming village, they have this, the village collective have this incubating system. It's called baby and silkworm apartment. where the baby silkworms are growing for the first 10 days. They're living in this incubator owned by the village collective, and then distributed to the farmers' houses after 10 days, which is a better system, incubating system for the whole production, but also generate income for the local village collective as a collective entity. So it does, I mean, agriculture, it's not only about the plants, but it's also about the collective economic system, a new kind of a structure, or co-op economic structure. So you have to, I mean, for that, as an architect, you really need to develop the kind of the boundary of your knowledge to get to understand more. And I'm also very excited about how this will reflect back on architecture as well. But in general, after, Songyang's story, like for the past almost 8 years, we've been working with the local, not only as a designer working on the commissioned projects, we rather take initiative. We provide architecture design as a solution, as the remedy targeting the symptoms of each village. And we also initiate collaborations. We propose to the local community, local authority, and saying that this is something we think it would be great, and it could really solve the problems. And if you're interested in working on that, so it is a way that's different from the conventional or mainstream architecture office. We are taking, instead of working on the receiving commissioned projects, it's the other way around. But we do think that you have to believe that architecture can really make a difference in that sense. And we should really kind of walk out of our office and into, the real fields. So I also want to show you a few of the process we've been working with. Let me see. Okay. So besides the agriculture system, we also have a number of projects looking into abandoned quarries. This is in another county, a neighbor county next to Songyang County. Then I show you these projects. And then we have I'm gonna just quickly go through that and you can understand. See, that's the abandoned quarry in the mountain area. And these are, and we believe that, they have been abandoned for over 2 decades. And in total, there are thousands of abandoned quarries in this county, because it used to be the main production or economic resource of revenue in this region. Okay. So we take these quarries and giving the minimal intervention strategy. For example, this could become a small outdoor theater. To give a viewing platform for this quarry as intangible heritage, quarry excavation into a performance. So this is almost like outdoor viewing terrace to look at the quarry excavation as a performance. And the next one is to take the acoustical character and convert it into music hall or a performance space. And so there could also be a light water pool in this quarry. And the next one is to convert a large quarry This is over 36 meters tall inside and into library space, you know, taking all the working stations into this reading platform. So that's becoming a quarry library, which is for, so the overall idea is to convert these abandoned quarries and with minimal intervention approach and take this space into public or service facilities in the region. Okay, so this is a system we've been working with, and we're going to have the exhibition in Berlin Aders next March. If you have time, the opening is March 18th. Welcome to come to the exhibition.
Thank you.
And we also, I have one more. Have you heard about the Toulouse project?
No.
No.
Do you know about Toulouse?
Yes, you have in French Toulouse.
Yes.
It's the cycle around Earth's big residence.
Exactly. It's also a defensive castle, right? And it could host thousands of people living in this one single building. And you've learned Toulouse as UNESCO heritage, but only 46 are listed as UNESCO heritage, and still thousands of Toulouse are actually in critical conditions. So in this case, we also wanted to work with these non-UNESCO heritage Toulouse buildings and take architecture, like I said, as the remedy, targeting the current issues. For example, to provide a better, to increase living standards for these original inhabitants, to provide a modern facilities, and also convert the vacant space, unoccupied space, into public area or just leisure, and inviting visitors and generate income for the local original inhabitants. That would be one. And another case is that with abandoned, I mean, not actually many of the Toulouse becoming vacant and abandoned. Look at all these villages, they start to build houses around modern houses and abandon the original Toulouse. So with this kind of abandoned Toulouse, we wanted to make it into a community center because it has some certain sentimental connection with the original villages. And all these voids that are rundown spaces, we just left it as what it is now, as the courtyards or gardens. So we also, again, just to take the architecture as a different architecture as the remedy for different issues, looking at Toulouse. Okay, let me get out of this screen. Share screen. Yeah. So that are the projects that I just want to give you the overview that this is quite different from what you maybe the mainstream of our architecture work. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very inspiring, actually. I really like that. Well, at first I didn't know. Well, it was the first insight into like looking at Chinese architectural firms, and it's very inspiring that you do this kind of work, and it's I mean, yeah. Thank
you. I'm really happy with what we are coming along. I mean, this is also not very common in China, the working method. But after the rural, with Songyang's story, we do discover that architecture has the capacity and potential, for architects to really bring it as your tool, as your, kind of a, I don't know, tool, your instruments, and you can really become the one who can initiate the collaborations and really taking architecture to fix things. That I think is very, I'm really excited about how we can achieve this. And of course, we have to see, I mean, it's not always successful. The Tulo project is something that we are still negotiating, but we'll see how it's going to develop next.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And actually, you talked about the rural counties, but I think you also worked on a city. I saw the other project that you did in 2021 in the city center. So as an architect to the student who are still studying, maybe you may explain us about, is it different to work in a rural area than and also in a city area?
I think I have to start with the rural. That was totally a new territory for me before 2014. You know, we started from 2014. And before that, I think my experience and my knowledge and my education were all about urban buildings, urban architecture. So rural really, it was a new challenge, but it was also a new opportunity for me to learn so much more and to develop my thinking or my perspective on architecture, and which has led our working way. I mean, quite a different way as compared to the mainstream, right? But I also think that the knowledge we have learned in rural can reflect our working in urban as well. That is some of our projects in Songyang County. We have also come back to the county urban center with the acupuncture strategy to look into the cultural heritage, the historical heritage in the cities as well. Even in the small corners, we had this museum of poetry. Maybe you have learned the project online. You can find it online. It used to be a very important cultural historical heritage of the whole county. One of the most important historical figure and the poetries, but it was the site would just become a leftover space by the urbanization, you know, by the road planning in the past decades. So we wanted to address to this cultural heritage, historical context of the county, and we introduced this museum of poetry and the memorial garden program into this triangular site. And I think that culture is not we don't just have the cultural heritage in the rural, but we also have so many embedded underneath layer of modern life. We still have traditions. Are you all in Paris at the moment? If you are, I think just the building you are inside, just the location you are sitting on, you're standing on, it has so much to tell in the past, in the history of Paris, right? And I mean, this is something that we should really kind of, it's our treasure that is hidden, that is forgotten. And we with our architectural strategy or means or instrument, we are able to rediscover the cultural historical tradition in our city as well. And on the other hand, the thing I have learned that in the rural, in ways low density, the building or the space, you have such a closer connection with the nature. You have the light, you have the air, the water, the breeze. And this is something maybe, when working in the urban, we should always keep in mind all these elements from nature could become the elements of our architecture back into the cities.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That was very well said. I'm gonna jump actually to another question because I mean we have a lot, and so you said last time that the Huiming Tea Space was open to residents, and that it was a public space. What about the Tofu Factory? Is it important to you that all the buildings are have public spaces embedded in them? And also what I'd like to know is the Tofu Factory also open day and night? How about the it's that's all.
Yes, all of these projects are multifunctional buildings in the rural, because we cannot have, you know, like the cities, you have museums, you have cinemas, you have, you know, you have different kind of the public categories, but in village, there are not many public programs. The only public space in the village used to be the ancestors' hall. There was the only public space accommodating funeral, weddings, all the activities for holidays and events in the village. So now with this acupuncture, we want to introduce a new public program and public space into the village. But this program is actually a multifunctional, flexible space. It could be production. The production is also a live performance or live museum of the village heritage, right? So it attracts visitors, or we want to say this is culture and educational tourism, because it attracts young children with family coming along, or students from the schools coming along to study, to learn how to the traditional way of making tofu. So it is, I mean, both the tofu and both the tea space are production, which is agricultural, but it's also cultural heritage. And on the other hand, it's also educational facility. And then if you look at the tea house, the tea house is also accommodating different tea ceremony events. And the tofu space, the tasting hall at the top of the hill is also a classroom for children as well. So it is always looking for multi-function, and which we think is much more efficient architecture in a way. And we encourage that, you know, with this modest scale or number of building area, we want to accommodate more programs as possible.
Okay, actually, I saw pictures on the internet about children coming into the tofu factory and taking and doing like seeing how the tofu process is made, and it's very nice. Okay.
Yeah, we have a small. We also have a set of smaller tools. You know, maybe 1/4 of the original one, only for the children to be able to perform, to make their smaller version of tofu pieces.
It's nice.
Actually, it just came to my mind, but I'm a student from South Korea, and I'm also from a village with a tofu factory, which is really famous in Korea. So, and it's my friend's family that runs that factory, and it's really different from this type of factory. I mean, to show how it it
Mhm.
works. I've never
Right.
really saw the process of the tofu manufacturing. I'm not sure it's in China there it doesn't bother to show how you work during. Is there any specific schedule or it's
No,
really open for
it is.
24 hours?
No,
Not
it's not
24
only
hours,
open.
but
Yeah, it's open for the daytime, and when they received orders, they will have the production in this factory. And also during holidays, even if they didn't have orders, they will have this tofu making as a holiday events, because it also sells well, on holidays with the visitors. So it is kind of becoming a well, we take the space, we take the whole tofu making as a performance. So the space is also like stages, right? Like a live performance. And with this, actually, I mean, I don't know why, but every village, we went to other counties. Every county has a village that make the best tofu in the region.
That's exactly what he said to me last time. He said, "We have the best tofu in Korea. You should come visit and taste."
Exactly.
but that's true.
Yeah, and it's but it's really fascinating because you get to learn. For me, it was really amazing to see how they make tofu. The whole process from these soya beans into the either fresh tofu or this deep fried tofu, and also the soya milk, and everything was so delicious there. And also you get to understand how it's produced, how it's made. So I think that was quite a pleasant experience or journey for all visitors coming from city to understand the local culture and production. But it's not running 24 hours. Unlike the brown sugar factory, the brown sugar production is starting, I think was last week, about 2 weeks ago, normally by mid-November, and that's running 24 hours a day. But the tofu is quite different. So every production is different. Rice wine is also having its own different procedure or production season.
Yeah.
And so it's so much more, it's such a kind of a rich, in terms of agriculture and production, it's so rich in the rural, and it has so many varieties. But it's also related with the season, the time, how they grow the raw material ingredients. So it is quite a new territory, and that's why I'm really into this the sustainable agriculture we're going to work with in the next phase. I think it's just we talk about agriculture as it's just abstract term or terminology, but it's actually really opens up a new world for me, at least. So much more to learn.
Okay, looking forward to taste one day tofu.
Yeah. If you have time, I would like to show you something we just made.
Sure.
I think it will be, and let me see, do I have this share screen? And I want to show you this video.
Is it playing? We can't see anything.
Oh, you cannot see this, right?
No.
Wait. Hold on 1 second. Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the Tea Space, local shared minority. And this building is not only for production, but it's also for cultural events like the Tai Chi performance, and tea ceremony in this region. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for the video. Much appreciated. And before we move on to the more detailed question about each project, we have a last general question. We know that in Asian culture, constructing a building, it's quite common to apply the notion of feng shui. I'm not sure it's the right pronunciation. Feng shui to make the best out of the site. So do you also consider the notion when you do your project? Because it's quite common in Korea, even in a modern society, to consider this notion when we building. And did you also apply this concept to these two project, or?
No, we didn't really, talk about feng shui when we are in our working process. But I would say that feng shui is somehow quite a, like a tradition, just it could also be quite scientific to decide where to build and where you want to go around, like the river or the trees. It's quite just common sense that we work with architecture as well. So no, we are not working with feng shui, but I wouldn't say that it's conflicting or it's nonsense. No, and maybe somehow it's shared a very similar philosophy as how we see working with working as architects as well.
So first we'll talk about the Tofu Factory, if that's okay. So the first question was, your architectures highlights traditional methods, whether it be by use, such as tofu chip production, by materials or construction methods. But it is hard to make villagers accept a return to tradition and simplicity in a world where modernity and technology are advocated, especially in big cities, for example. Are there any who do not believe in these traditional methods, and is it up to you to convince them?
Well, with this tofu project, I think it's also a modern architectural language. No, it's having dialogue with tradition, but it's our very modern assembly timber structure, which shared a similar term. I think it's in between how we say the steel structure and the traditional tenon and mortise wooden structure. It's not something totally steel and glass, but it's also not just a very vernacular building technique, because there has to prefabricated and in the factories, and then assembly on site in this mountain factory, which we found it's quite a efficient way, because it requires less construction time, and also it works quite well with the local and vernacular, building typology, the tenon and mortise wooden structure. So it's not, it makes very kind of a quick connection with the local building typology. So the villagers, even though this is a very modern factory, the villagers are not against it at all. They like how the and also the woods, it's very warm feeling. And we thought that was very fitting, because the whole tofu factory is like a common kitchen for the village. Because you make tofu, but basically for the family workshops, you're producing tofu back in your kitchen. So that's like you're working, as a common kitchen for the family workshops to work together.
Okay. So you said that it's like a wooden structure, and it's a little bit modern.
It is the modern structure system. If you look at that, now we have a timber, this wooden timber assembly timber stadiums. I think was designed by Zaha Hadid. 100% timber structure, and we have these timber airports in Canada. And now there's a high-rise, I think it's in Scandinavia, somewhere Norway or Denmark. There's a high-rise apartment building by timber structure. This is a modern, you know what building. This is a modern timber structure, but this is very different from the traditional timber structure. Traditional timber structure is only for the farmers' houses or for our traditional buildings. Same in China and in Korea. But the structure system for fire issue, for safety issue, you cannot fit with the modern building regulations, at least in China. And I think theoretically it should also apply to Korea, to Japan, and other countries, because it's more like the crafts. It's more like the local crafts, but it's not for the fitting with the structural calculation or the fire regulations. And most of the timber structure only, it doesn't work with the cement floors. So with our modern technology, we're able to build the timber high-rise apartment buildings, and also very large span swimming pools, stadiums, airports. So that's a new technology, totally. But it does have a connection and dialogue with tradition as well.
Yeah, so it's like mixing both words, and
exactly.
So you kind of answered the second question. We had we saw that in the pictures there was little houses made from earth, and we were wondering, was earth an option you had for the tofu factory? And
No, there wasn't ram earth, right? Like it's like the Tulo, you know, by earth that's rammed earth. Yeah, ram earth is very good building material, but it requires very intensive laboring on site, and you could only ram the earth maybe a floor like 1 month a floor. So I know that in Tulo building, in the Hakka Tulo, the round ram earth building, it takes years to build a Tulo, just the ram earth. The wooden structure is very easy to assemble, but the ram earth, it could take years. So the ram earth is working with the small scale buildings, it's possible, it's okay, but working with a larger scale, relatively a larger scale, it would require quite a longer period for construction. But for Tofu Factory, it's we had a ram earth for the Ancestors Memorial Hall, but not for Tofu, because Tofu working as, you know, like a village common factory kitchen, we actually treat it more as an open scenario, open stage. So it's all, actually, you don't really see many walls in this project.
Okay. So maybe I'll jump to the next questions, because so the site is located between mountains near a river on a slope. How did you interpret this place before your project? It's, well, I'll let you.
And no, this site was provided by the village community. They have already, well, you have to decide where, you have to choose the site, right? And it has to be buildable site, buildable area, because you cannot build in agricultural land.
Yeah.
So in this village, the village community has already picked this land. They intended to build something, but they were not sure at the moment, but the land at the entrance of the village was available and also buildable. So there was, you know, very easy to work with this pre-existing condition for the factory to be the first arrival point for the village.
Okay, so it was.
So it was already terraced.
Yeah.
It wasn't decided. It was not decided by us. It was provided, given by the village community, and was already terraced by them.
Okay.
Before we came in. Yeah.
And it was actually you that proposed the Tofu Factory. It wasn't like they said we want to make a tofu factory here or something.
That was after they didn't have any
program
initial at the moment. Yes, but they saw the brown sugar factory, so they decided to work with a tofu factory as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and you said that the villagers are proud of their tradition, but we wondering if in the world where technology occupy more and more space, it is sometimes hard to make the villager accept this valorization of tradition.
I think it depends. Some villages are more open than the others, and some of the villages they are more willing to hold on to what they have already, like renovation of existing structures. So it's really, I mean, every village, it's a family for generations. It holds a very strong family context, a large family with hundreds of people, and each family is different. You have to talk with them and to communicate one by one to know what they want, and And some villages, they prefer to have something very modern, like in the cities, steel and glass. So we have to also kind of negotiate with them. And I think in that, it's not what I can decide or what you can decide in our work office or in the classroom. It's we have to go out to talk to them, and maybe they can help to fix right away. And so that, I think in that, it's something maybe we are not able to provide from the education, but we as an architect, you need to be able to communicate. It requires really a lot of communication skills. But it is also very important for us, before we design, we need to understand why and if, whether we should design this, whether we should build this, and why we should build it. Especially if you want to take initiative like we do and to provide architecture design as solutions, we have to understand where the problems are and how to fix it.
Okay, thank you. So is it up to you to convince them? No?
No, it's not up to us. It's we have to. I think it's a mutual communication and a collective decision. It has to reach to common agreement. Yes, and it's not we don't have the power or privilege to decide, but we I think it's really different. It's case by case. We're not talking about, like I said, agriculture isn't just an abstract concept. Rural or village is neither an abstract. It's very different from one village to another.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question about the roof of the Tofu. We can see that each room has a roof with different sawtooth section, whether by orientation, inclination, or just length. Can you explain why the manufacture of tofu requires nuances in lights or air intake?
First of all, the roof comes with this language, sloped roof in the mountain, the local building typology. It's mostly for rain, right? When it rains, the sloped roof works the best. And you can see the neighbor building, the historical building has this very small pitched roof. So we decided to work with the sloped roof, but instead of a two double sides, we actually work with the one side to bring in light coming into the space. It's more with the one-story building, we would also want to have, because with the footprint, you need to introduce the skylights. So I think for us, it was just kind of a language from local, and we thought works the best with the production space. It's also quite a common language when you work with the factories, with this kind of a repetition of sloped roof to bring in lights. And for the orientation, we do have a different, for the preparation arrival and for the tasting hall, that's facing, coming to or looking out. And for the 4 chapters in the middle section, the production, I think was the cooling, cooling compartment, grinding compartment, and boiling compartment, and deep frying compartments. So these are like 4 different chapters as different episodes, and also different temperature of the production, right? So we just kind of shifting the roof from west, facing either west or facing east. So it gives kind of a different orientation of light. It's like a different chapters, different episodes when you are, for you to observe what they're making. And so that gives you just different, 4 directions of how the roof, how the different compartments are oriented. And talking about the angle, it's actually, you know, we do have two angles, but it's because the walkway, we make it more intense. So for the kind of angle, it's actually bigger angle, it's more intense repetitions compared to the production. So it separates the space for visitors and for the production. Does it make sense? It's quite a, if you look into it, this kind of very subtle change on the roof. Yeah, but I'm really glad that you noticed that.
Actually, we can see it on the photo. We worked on a 3D modelization of your building, and even in the photos we can see like the light shift. It's like we have like a compartment here, and then just one step further you have another feeling.
Right. And then I hope that gives you the kind of, it's changing of episodes here.
Yeah, and it's also like the walkway is in the center of it, and it's, we can show you maybe like what we did.
Yeah, I would like to see.
Maybe if you're searching it, I have a little question about natural light. I think you are very smart how to use natural light in your building. You have the ability to model space with natural light. Is it something that you are sensitive to, or do you learn about that during your studies? How does it came to you, this ability and the way you like to work with natural light?
I like what you said. I think it is, and I'm more alert to light, because I have noticed the light, the shadow on your screen at your back wall. Yes, I was just wondering, how did you, where is light from? But yes, I think I'm really alert to light, and I think light is something quite pleasant in space. But I also think darkness is also very sensational in space as well. The different level of darkness too. And I think this is how it's quite a advantage or opportunity when you're working in the rural. You have a lower density, not like in the cities, and especially when you're working with the lower levels of buildings. And this is something that really it's a luxury to work with, you know. And like I said in the beginning, you know, the quality of light and the sound, air, you know, the breeze coming into the space, and even the water, the sound of water, rain coming into the space. I think these are something that we should never forget when we are working back in the cities as well. But it is, you know, in the rural, and when everything and all the conscious is more related, really closely connected with the nature, with a different time of the day, different season of the year, you know, that's how agriculture is based. And so you really have a different sensibility towards the changing, the always changing nature of our environment, which maybe we are getting kind of more less sensitive in the city, right? We talk about different things when we are in cities. Wow, that's quite, yeah. That's amazing how you build this structure already. Yes, and it is looking right, correct? It's a this on the roof, on this angle and the kind of the orientation. It's just quite a simple geometry. It's quite a simple, you know, kind of a division in geometry, but it makes, you know, and and with this, I would say, texture on the roof. It gives a kind of a sense of texture on the roof, or a texture or form, like the base units. But it really makes a different sensation, especially when you are in the walkway. And then if you have this kind of perspective, looking up or looking down, the shifting of roof really becoming quite an expression at the walkway. And yeah.
Karim, ton micro.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm relieved that it's correct, because I didn't know if it was right or not. Also, the topography, I don't think it's that high.
Yeah, it's not as steep.
Yeah,
it should be more flat.
exactly.
Yeah,
it should be more flat. Yeah, but overall, it's coming quite well, I think. Some good stuff. So maybe we can continue with the
Yes.
questions. Yeah.
Yes, with more formal questions, but what was the budget for this project, and is this budget average compared to your other project in the same area?
pretty much similar. Yes, we had a budget calculated, and I think it was 1,200 square meters in total, and then the cost per square meter is about 4,600 RMB, which is maybe around €6 per square meter for the construction budget.
Okay.
So that's pretty much similar to the others. I mean, these are not very much in terms of the Chinese scale. It's quite modest for the Chinese standards, but which I think is much lower than in Europe.
Yes.
€600, €600 or €700 per square meter for the construction budget.
Okay,
and given
thank
the
you.
fact that it's also it's not a big project. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And the last question is the Tofu Factory gives a real place to the human being with this central alley for observation, and this large base open on the outside. Does the place of the plants, the vegetable, have the same importance and is taken into account in your architecture?
And not in this project.
Okay.
It is related with the village. The production is like a common kitchen for the village, but it does change how the farmers in the village grow the raw material, the soya beans in the terrace fields around the village. They're actually growing more ecological soya beans. So like right in this building, it's really more working closely with the village fabric, with the other houses, the other buildings. But our new project, and I'm glad you raised this question. Our new project with the sustainable agriculture, we're starting with 3 projects. So these 3 projects are really working more with the agriculture, with the plants, with the vegetation, with the trees. And I'm also very, I mean, this is a new challenge.
Okay.
I don't have any idea yet, but I think it will definitely also influence on the architecture. It would be quite a different from the Tofu Factory you've seen here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this answer.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Huiming Tea Space. During the last interview with the University of Val de Seine, we also sent some question, and they they ask you the question about the project instead of us. So we may focus more on the environment for this interview. And before we ask for the question, we want to show also the modeling and some sketch that we did. Khoa?
Yeah. So we created the approach on 3D to understand how the project works, and we also create some sketch of circulation in sunlight and how the program distribute, and we create some perspective in June. In
for
June,
the material.
Right. Yeah.
So since we already asked you the question through the student of Val de Seine, we have more question about the site of this area. So it's surrounded by the tea planting area, as we saw in the video. This is quite unique as a construction site. I think the step terrain, like with a multiple like a stairs. So I wonder, when you start doing the project, what was your first impression of this site and how did you interpret it? Usually, do you prefer to visit the site before starting a design, or look first for the information like in a internet or in a document, or?
No, it's very simple. I went to the site. I went to look for the buildable site with the client, with the village together. And so I think that day we started 4 a.m. from the hotel, and we went to climb up to the mountain just to experience how the mountain, like the very sacred mountain for the local people. So we went to, well, unfortunately, we didn't get to see it was crowded, so we didn't get to see the sunrise. But then we went back down to this, which is the middle level of the mountain. This is the whole area is the scenic district. There's a district committee. So we went with the authority of the committee and also the village people to this location. It's just at the foot of the temple on this mountain. So there's this already flat land. It's probably it was the best site to build, and also for the regulation, it wasn't a basic agricultural land, so it was able to build. And then that's how we all decided to build on this parcel. And I mean this, this is quite away from the village, right? It's almost like a site in the landscape, in the nature. And also on the other side, it's looking down to the county urban fabric, the city as well. So it gives us the idea that, I mean, this is not just like Tofu Factory, it's part of the village fabric. It's part of the daily life. But here, the tea space, it's not representing the daily life. It's more representing the sense of nature, the philosophy of nature, and the basic law of nature for us, because we're not only seeing the platform or the program as building, we see the whole mountain as architecture. We see the whole surrounding, even the mountain. We look out to the mountain across the county in the far distance, also as kind of a sense of architecture. So the space is really expanding. It's not only on the site, on this flat site. The space we are designing is really expanding to the city, to the mountain at a distance, and maybe to the sun. That's how we it was quite a challenge for us to work on this project. You know, within a small scale practical program, we wanted to create a platform to understand culture and agriculture, a platform to create a dialogue with the nature. And also, maybe more important, how the nature can resonate in this building, or our building is breathing with nature.
Okay,
I
so
mean, if you work with your model, I know you're working with Rhino, but if you put it into SketchUp, you will see how the light and shadow, if you put it on the right altitude and longitude, location, and you will go through, you know, at the summer solstice day, you go through every hour, you see how the light is going into each light tube in Rhino, in SketchUp model. That's how we worked, you know, before that was built. But you could also see the video. The light is really coming into each one, you know, by different animal hours.
Okay, so that'll be your common way to approach that, even for other projects. So you.
No, it's different. Yeah. I think like Tofu Factory, it's part of the village, right? It's the building is larger in terms of building area compared to Tea Space, but the scale of building is smaller. It's only extension of the village fabric. But then for the Tea Space, it's slightly smaller, but the scale or the ambition or the dialogue it's creating, maybe it's larger.
I was talking about how you approach a site. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, it's really it's a case-by-case situation again. Like the villages are different, or the projects are different as well.
Okay. Actually, I just happened to pose a question about the Buddhist. So there's a temple, right? And and in the introduction of this project, I saw that it's integrating the Shi culture, the local culture, with the Buddhist culture. So right. How is it integrate? I mean, apart from the Shi character or something like that, is there really the monks who came by, or it's how?
No, the Shi people settled down here before the monk came over. Yeah, that was back in the Tang Dynasty, 1200 years ago. So the Shi minority settled down here, and then later on the monk Huiming and also and came here to build the Huiming temple. And help the local villagers to plant tea, to grow tea. So the Huiming tea has quite a reputation in the region, and also quite expensive in a way. I mean, for hundreds of years, it generates income for the local villagers because of the quality of tea. And I think well, for Buddhism or whatever, I think or just the local, even the Shi culture history, and the tea, the spirit of tea, right? Tea is not just a production or food, it's also a culture. And it's always about the respect to nature, and always about how the nature is not only about human and the planet, it's also all about the other species, we have the term of biodiversity these days, which is the same concept, that we are living in harmony with all the other species and in this nature, in this one nature. That's, I think, the philosophy. It's pretty much universal in every culture around the world. And I think that's from the the similar value from the agricultural era, when our living, our life are all based on the nature, decided by the nature. It's different from our industrial era, where we can conquer the nature. You know, the mankind can conquer and dominate and change, which kind of have this, which actually bring, we all understand now that our ambition on Earth has brought us the disaster, payback. So it is, I think it is a moment for us, all of us, and every individual of us to really to contemplate, you know, the role of human in this planet, and whether we can go on like this or not.
Okay.
This is our final question. As we seen recently on your video, there are a thin layer of water, and it's raining. I just wondering how the system of water work, and how water evacuate in your project.
In this way, the water is just very thin layer of water mostly to dissipate the summer heat for this space, and it's also working like a how do you say that, like a camouflage that hide the building, because we're always looking at the building from top, right? So it makes the building volume almost disappear when you are looking down. You only see these sculptures of the light tubes almost as monument. So we do take this building, you know, looking above from the temple, coming from the temple, the building disappeared, merged with the surrounding. It's more just like a platform or a monument for the sun, instead of a architectural piece. So that's how we want to make it this kind of a conceal.
And how, I just wondering how where the water come from. Is it natural water or
it's rainwater? It's the rainwater, yeah. Right?
Okay, thank you. Is a final question.
Inside of the building, there's a passage that is quite large. It's almost 1/3 of the total width of the building. And also we can see that the sunlight tubes direct light towards this passage rather than the rooms. So we were wondering, why did you decide to give the hallway such importance?
It's not just a hallway, it's a public space to understand, to observe and understand the traditional tea making process. So it's a viewing gallery, and this is a space also for the farmers, for the villagers, as a resting lounge, especially in the summer days. It's quite kind of a more the temperature drops inside the space, and it's quite a comfortable resting lounge here. So that's the place to attract visitors, to observe the tea production, and also to provided as the public lounge for the villagers. And I mean, it is 1/3 of our programs, overall programs. We have the production, we have the tea house, which makes a kind of a complete loop for tea culture in general. Tea culture isn't only about production, it's also about tea tasting and appreciating the nature, the mountain, the sky beyond. And so 1/3 of this visitor lounge is the space for public to understand traditional tea production, and also the shared culture indicated with the pictograph wall. So this space we think was quite important. It's sitting in between, production and tasting space, and it's a central axis. I mean, all these programs are actually near, or with orientation and facing north and south, looking back to the main gate of the temple. I mean, each one is like almost like a measurement on site. So in this space, we also wanted to introduce this a measurement to capture the light and the time. And in Chinese culture, there are 24 solar terms a year for agricultural calendar. It's indicating the agricultural activities, productions, instead of 4 seasons. And each day is divided into 12 animal zodiac hours based on animal activity patterns. So, I mean, in general, the agriculture is really kind of paying attention or observing or respecting our nature, observing the routine, the cycle, the pattern of our nature, and also address to, also have the awareness that the planet, the nature isn't only shared by human being, owned by human being, it's shared with the other animals. So in this ancient philosophy already, it has this broad kind of scope, including the biodiversity, which we don't have the concept anymore in modern society. So that's the idea that we wanted to bring back with this tea space, that by production, by functions and beyond. And I mean, there are still so many layers of culture, historical and agricultural understanding or philosophy back in our history. And we want to kind of bring this kind of content back with this project.
Okay. Does the water surface on the roof have a cultural significance, or is it only there to dissipate summer heat?
It's for the summer heat because it could get really hot in summer, but it's also a way to kind of make the architectural volume disappear. It's a reflecting pool on roof for the surrounding mountain and sky. And the idea is to also to only show the walkway, which is the north direction, north and south direction, and together with the light tunnels as the sculpture coming out of the water surface.
Yeah, actually, I just have something to add. In an economic point of view, I know that Morocco, the country where I come from, consumes a lot of tea and imports like the tea from China actually, and they consume they import somewhere along 70,000 tons a year. So it's like a big industry, and it's very very important actually. And very interesting that the economic point of view is integrated to every project. It's very inspiring again. So with that, we'd like to conclude our interview. So thank you very much for your time. I think you have answered enough questions. So we can maybe send you our final paper and would like to have your feedback on it if that's okay. So maybe on WeChat, or we can send it to Madame Magali Paris. So yeah, we had like a question for the conclusion, but you already answered it. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you very
morning.
much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day, and maybe we'll see each other in Berlin.
Yeah, March 18th. Yes,
March
welcome.
18th. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
good
you
luck
very
with
much.
the
Have a good
projects.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.